almost always in a kerfuffle that's going on between partners or friends or colleagues. There's something that happened that somebody made a story up about and then stepped into that story and out of direct relationship with the person. And so you go off on this detour.
Hello, Katie.
Hello, Sophie. It's so lovely to see you again.
Always.
In your gorgeousness.
Oh, thank you. It's funny because today I was thinking our blouse really kind of go together. There's this blue grayness that I really like.
Well, I love that. I find that also with gay, that we'll be getting ready to go out somewhere and we'll show up and people will say, "Oh, did you plan your your outfits?" And we go, "Well, actually, that is just a function of living in harmony, and co-creativity with each other." Although sometimes gay says, "I don't want to be a bowling team."
Oh, no.
So,
no.
yeah,
No bowling team.
We don't want to be matchy-matchy.
No, I love that. Well, so have you been coughing this week, huh? You've been coughing?
Yeah, I'm just getting over a crud. And it was my first crud really since the pandemic, aside from COVID, which I got. But I love this.
Let's go. I'm telling you, my voice right away goes to a different octave. It's really fun.
Let me just, oh yeah, I can feel that too. A lot more opening.
I think pushing the bubbles with the sound that we're pushing through, somehow it creates a little clearing of the traffic or something, like a green light in there. I love that.
Yeah, because all the traffic goes through here.
When you think of it, from that road, that's the biggest distance we'll ever, right? You know that thing, the 17 inches between.
Oh yeah, from head to heart, and we also say that the this area is really the what to pay attention to, both for opening your connection with you, but also opening your connection with others, is making that opening more free to have ideas, especially flow up from your body and from your breath and from your presence. Rather than
those that are listening to the audio and not the visual, Katie is pointing to her throat, like to the air.
Yes, yes, thank you. I forget that not everybody is watching us in all of our glory today.
Yes. For the record, we're wearing blues and grays, and just if you're not watching. So something happened. It's funny because the way you just went at answering this question even reminds me about one of the things I love most about you, but you're so deep. You naturally are so deep. Like we could be talking about the lightest thing and you will just take us. And so, and not in a heavy way, not in a like, whoa, let's be serious about it, but just you deepen the conversation. And so something happened yesterday to me that because of this, I was like, I really want to hear. So if that's all right with you, I wanted to tell you a little bit of just set up a little scenario with what happened.
I'd love that. Yeah.
And kind of hear what would Katie do? Because I was really, so I'm playing pickleball and you know my story around that. I'm not athletic. I wasn't athletic growing up, and I wake up at 6 a.m. to go play, so one would say I have a behavior now, of I put in my 2 hours and all of that. And so, and I could see on the court, I'm younger. It's like, I could see that my maturity as a human gets a little bit dropped. Like I act like I'm upset if I miss a ball, or if the friend doesn't want to play with me, or some of those things. And so to give you context, that's what I'm aware of, is I get younger.
Okay. Yes.
So yesterday I'm on the court and I asked my friend, who's a really good player, if she would play with me, rotating from this other thing so I can play with a good player and improve. And she looked at me straight in the face and walked away. And it hurt me so deep. I kind of choked just thinking about this effect it had on me. And so now I'm playing and I'm like trying to be engaged. I'm not present. I'm in my head. My body is not where I want it to be. It was just such a misery. It didn't last super long, but it was long enough that I was just like, what do I do when this happened? And for the record, she checked in with me later. She was like, something seemed off with you today. And I said, it looked like you walked away, as I asked to play with you. And she was she like, I didn't hear you. I made up this entire thing. So,
Oh, you made up this story. Yes.
yes. And so I was giving you like the before and after a little bit because none of it was true, really. I mean, it looked true. She looked like she was looking at me and walked away. And so I was curious. It was almost like my body was reacting. It wasn't, I couldn't fully master let's get out of this, like I couldn't really get out of it. So
what I'm hearing is, I think what sometimes people today call a trigger, that you got triggered. Yeah. And when that happens, you really are bypassing your thinking brain.
Okay.
When that happens, something, it's like we used to play dodgeball. Yeah. When I was in school. Yeah, I think it would be illegal now because you
were going after the kids.
Exactly. And so there were a couple of times where I wasn't looking and the ball went, and just really, really got me. And my body, my brain couldn't process what was going on in my body. And what it sounds like is that also you didn't have a chance to move through the do they like me and do they not like me when I'm out on the court, because you didn't let yourself play in the athletic field. And so coming in, you probably, your body self was more like when you were a teen or, maybe even younger than that.
It felt like 7.
And those like I was 7. Can really get activated where you feel awkward and it's like you just flash back to that time in your life. And my sense is too that in order to, what you did was recognize that you'd made up a story. And in my work with people, and one thing I've recognized for myself is that in the absence of information, I make up a story. And I make up a story from the elements that I can pick out, and then I just put them together. Mm-hmm. I weave them together. It's like one of those books that I used to read to my kid, where you have 3 different sections, and there's a top part of your body and a middle section of your body and a bottom part of your body, and you can put an elephant on top of a mouse, and with a trunk in the middle, and so I think we make up stories from what's available. Mm-hmm. And then we assume that that's real, and then continue relating to that person from the story rather than like checking out, here's what I heard. So I think it was great that you both kind of came around so you could check out the story, and that she could tell you what actually happened, and my sense is that was a gift to you to bring that part of yourself current, and deal with the, people don't like me or I'm not going to be included, because I think we all have those experiences, especially from junior high time.
Mm-hmm. Especially from having been 300 some pounds, where I literally was the kid at the end, where one team has to be like, all right, you can come to our team because we don't have a choice,
I hear you sort of laughing about that, but I actually feel like crying when
it was so sad.
It was so sad, but also that you were able to shift out of that, from your 300 plus pounder self to your current self so quickly. Mm-hmm. I'm appreciating that. And I wonder if, you appreciate all of the work and all of the letting go of and all of the bringing yourself current that led to that interaction.
It is definitely, and we've talked a couple of times on the show already, but that place of the non-athletic, like I've worked it out in the world of, I'm smart. I like the way I think, I'm funny, I'm kind, and there's lots of things I like about myself. But this thing of like, my body is it's definitely choking me a little bit, but it's like almost like accompanying this little girl, and bringing her along and just tell her she was okay. She is okay.
Yeah. But also what I'm getting is I'm just sort of I'm wrapping you up, but I'm also wrapping up the little you that was actually the big you.
Yeah.
So now you're the big you that's actually the little you. So, and that we can have, like just looking at you, one would never guess that you have this history. And I think for you being willing to bring that forward when she makes an appearance, I think is such a gift, because I don't know any person, and particularly any women, that don't have something like that stashed in the closet, and stashed in the closet of ourselves somewhere. Like I had a whole bunch of images come up when you were talking about that were all sports related, because I grew up in an era where you had to get weighed in public. Which was, and then, it was absolutely awful. And then wearing these clothes, gym clothes, that even if you were the most attractive kid on the block, would make you look like you just came from a rummage sale, and nothing ever fit anybody. And it was, but it was the having people judge me. And then I would judge myself against, how other people looked. And that was part of the standard. It wasn't what was going on inside. It was how you looked and how you were able to perform, and whether you were strong or coordinated. And and I was more, I loved to move, but I wasn't athletic. I loved to move the way I felt, which, actually turned into my profession. But being on a team, I would get hit in the head with the ball, and
so I get to hug you now. Like,
yeah.
what a sadness of these moments. They really was.
Yeah.
It was hard. Yeah.
It was hard, and I know that things are different today, but I imagine the same kinds of exclusion, inclusion, because that's one of the big human games of, no, you're in and you're out. And, and it was reminding me of, I had a very close friend when I was growing up in the one place that I had lived long enough to have a best friend. And then this other girl started showing up, and then we sort of did threesomes for a long time. And then one day I realized, oh, I'm not included anymore. And it was, probably one of the saddest things of my growing up, because that was my buddy. And then she wasn't anymore. And it was just really casual for her, but it was like it was like a death for me.
Do you think that's what's happening on the court yesterday, as an example, where it's almost like the movie, when they speed up the movie in a movie to show you something that happened 20 years ago? It's like,
oh, yes. Or they'll slow it down. They'll change the speed of it. And my sense is, absolutely, that those things just come through, and there's no way to protect yourself from them, because they're coming up from your body memory.
Yeah.
And the experience can be one of being flooded. I think what I really want to appreciate is that you recognize that you were making up a story. And one of the clarifying moves that I have seen people make that is hugely valuable is to say, this thing happened, and here's the story I made up. Or, I saw that, and it's basically, here's what I made up about it. And then you check it out. Because almost always in a kerfuffle that's going on between partners or friends or colleagues, there's something that happened that somebody made a story up about, and then stepped into that story and out of direct relationship with the person. And so you go off on this detour, and people get confused and go, what happened there? Because I don't feel as close to you now, or it feels like, something's going on here. We're off. And it almost always comes back to the story that the person made up.
and possibly both people. Like she
for
may have
sure.
been making up. I mean, she didn't in this case. She did sense that something was off. So that was, and she checked. So that was wonderful. But
That was
I'm
wonderful.
walking around with my not right story, and they walking around with their not right story. You could see where you end up in a situation where it's like we're so far off from what we intended, to share.
Well, and not only that, but if you multiply that towards even 10, much less 100 times, where those kinds of miscommunications occur, primarily because people don't really connect before they communicate. There's, what I call, fly-by communications, like, love you, babe, and out the door. Or, again, I used to have this thing that we recognized, that I'd be moving out of one room and going into another, and I'd hear a voice, and I go, wait, did you just say something to me? And he said, oh, yeah. And he didn't realize that I had left the room. So he was talking to me when I wasn't there. And, that's pretty obvious, but I think a lot of us, we talk to others when they're not there or when we're not there. And so I've really been giving attention to, okay, am I here? Am I being here? And then, are you here? And then just checking, like, is this a good, I had something come up, or I wanted to just share something, or even just, I want to connect with you, but we can't connect if we're going sideways, or somebody's contracted, or, they have another agenda going on.
Are you suggesting, or are you speaking to that? Should we speak to all of them, to everyone? Like, that feels like a full-time job a little bit, to be checking. Maybe we have less friends as we grow older because of that. But it takes, what if there's many interactions where I feel there could be a conversation about some story or some.
Yeah.
Are we saying it takes?
Well, what I like to do is to start with the few people, really the 1 to 5 people who are really in my inner circle, the people whom I really love and I know love me.
Yeah.
So to check out the story, I really recommend that you do that with somebody really loves you, who cares for you. No, it's really funny too, like that clog. See, if you have a disconnection, it registers in your body, and especially with people you care about. And if you don't handle it, it can become a phlegm clog and literally block your communication, either really sensing into what's going on or being able to share clearly what's going on. And I think as we move around in the world, there's all kinds of dings, and it's sort of like a game of dodgeball, that's going on all the time, like staying out of the way of cars where people don't know, what they're doing. They're not paying attention. But the communications that make a difference are the ones that with people that in the sharing, we get a chance to deepen our sense of presence and our sense of connection. And those are the ones that I want to repair. If there's anything that feels a little off, I might just say, oh, something, something's happening. And the story I'm making up is that, like, you're mad at me. Are you mad at me? And I can remember a lot of times with Gay, I would, because when he was writing, he would be in what I call writing mode, and he would have writing face.
Yeah.
And when I would come in, it would look like he was mad.
Yeah.
And so at first I would make up a story that I'd interrupted him and he was mad at me. And I probably had interrupted him, but he generally wasn't mad at me. But when I started checking it out, it was really just such a relief, because I think inside of each of us, there's this really vulnerable, there's a vulnerable child who's not really sure, not really sure that we're loved, and appreciated. I was just remembering the other day that the stats from years and years ago are that at least over half of us were either unloved and or unwanted at birth.
Wow.
And that's huge. So that leaves us like, oh, is it okay for me to be here? Am I really loved? And for most of us, that doesn't ever really get solved completely. And it takes a lot of work. I'm not actually work, but a lot of being with ourselves and loving ourselves to let that permeate into the cells.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's beautiful to think of there was a non-injured person before it was injured. So the state exists. It's not like we can't, I mean, some do probably when you're born with some conditions, but for the most part, we start in this vulnerable, raw, beautifully exposed, innocent state. And then life happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not like we can't, it's like a place to go back to. Like if I've gone to New York, I can go back to New York. It's not like New York is, you know what I mean?
I actually think of it too as not going back, but coming home.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because if I go back, then I basically don't want to remember all of that awful stuff. But what I want to remember is the aspects of my essence,
Mm-hmm.
my being that I can support and let them grow and radiate more, like my curiosity, essence qualities. Like for you, one of the things I so appreciate about you is your open-ended curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
You just really want to know what's going on. What do you, and how does that relate to that?
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened? And that is so a part of, like the vapors that surround you, that that is such a great thing to connect to and come home to. And it allows me to come home to my own essence when I connect with that in you.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. It's funny because you say it's funny, it's profound and poignant, not funny, how you say those things that they just resonate really true. Like people give compliments, blah, blah, but because you're so deep and so present in your own, what's true to you, that it taps into it's almost like you go deep to the roots of those trees that are connected, we are all one somewhere. And so we when you speak, there's this wisdom that just my whole body just like, that feels like home too.
I just love hearing that. And my experience is that with you, I can go deep. One of my colleagues the other day was talking about, he was saying that he was really looking for connection with people, and he just felt like he was kind of skating on the surface, and he was really looking for, where can I drop in, where can I drop into my deep being. And my sense is that as each of us allow ourselves to go deep, by feeling our bodies, by breathing more deeply, by allowing those emotions that are in there to come up and to be seen, that we are actually opening the highway. We're opening the ability for others to connect with themselves and with us. So for me, one of the reasons I'm doing this with you is that the joy of going deep and playing in the deeper waters. I've always loved whales. I went kayaking with whales a couple of decades ago in Alaska. The only thing that were there were two kayaks with 4 people, and the eagles and the whales. That was it. Except for a bunch of seals that came and flapped around us, which was also wonderful. And I realized that the whales, the way that they go deep and then come up again, we actually know now that that contributes to the circulation of the oceans. The whales actually contribute in a really magnificent way to the way that our ecosystem functions in the ocean. And my sense is that as we allow ourselves to go deep and then surface again with what is going on, that contributes to the circulation of love and being real and being able to co-create together, which to me is just the big joy.
Wow. I love the visual of a whale. That's such a beautiful, because it's in some ways it's heavy and grounded, and but in some ways it flaps its tails, and it can be
and it really and let me just tell you one more story from that experience. Is that I was with a friend, and we were in the kayak, and she was in the front and I was in the back of the kayak, And as we were kayaking, 5 whales were coming toward us. And she freaked out, like, oh my God, we have to go back. And I said, no, absolutely. They know we're here. They absolutely know we're here, and they're not going to hurt us. And we just paused, and they dove, all of them. And I could feel them going under us. And it was really one of the most awesome. I've got goosebumps even just thinking of it. And they didn't leave a wake. And one of the things I aspire to is being able to move through life without leaving a big wake, without leaving a lot of crashing debris around me. And so that sense of being more like the whales, of being very, but you can be huge, but also be very delicate. And I just took so much, in my body experience of that really continues to inform me. And I also, of course, am a total whale advocate now, and no drilling in the Arctic, and been signing petitions for over 20 years because of that felt experience of how precious they are.
Wow. That's funny, because I had an experience many decades, probably the same year as yours, because it was 20, more, 30. But I get sick on boats. I'm seasick, because, my ears, vertigo, whatever. And I wanted to brave that. And I knew I had a friend who had a sailboat, and I said, I don't want to just pedal around the marina. So we went to the south of France, and we were crossing to Corsica, which is like a 4-day thing. Like, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do it so you can just come back. I'm going to do it where you're just going, right? And I spent the 4 days in the boat, the bottom of the boat, throwing out my toes. I mean, it was just literally the worst experience of my life in some ways, because there was a dog, there was a husky on that boat, that friend, and he's with me the entire time. Like, the only time he leaves me is like to go grab a bite, literally, and comes back. And he's sitting next to me where I'm like basically a bucket, and I'm just like, going at it. And his paw comes on my hand, and he's looking at me like, you okay? You're going to be okay. Which was magical, but not as magical as at some point my friends yelled from the top that the dolphins had come, the way they navigate next to the boat in a different way than the whales, but also very. And so they were like, if you can crawl on the top of the boat right now is the time. Like, just if you have the energy, right? So I'm literally crawling up the stairs of that boat to get up there. But the part that was like similar to what is goosebumps to like what you were just describing with those whales is that I moved to the very front of the top of the boat. Like, when you're at the point, I don't know much about boats for obvious reasons, but I moved to the pointy part, and I'm standing there, and there they are, beautiful.
Yes, and they're all jumping and ripples and
like looking at each other and doing this like flappy thing, and incredible. But the part that was really special is that every time someone would come to the front to like be in that moment, they would go under the water, and I'd be like, okay, walk away for a second, and they would walk away, and there they were again. And then we did it 5-6 times, like almost like they really were there for me. Like, it was almost kind of like, you are a courageous trooper to be here when it's so hard for you. We're going to gift you. It was just such a moving.
And it sounds like too, you absolutely felt it.
Yes.
And you felt they're very famous for healing, for coming to pregnant women when they're in the ocean, and for helping rescue people who are out in the ocean. They absolutely know what's going on. I think that we are probably the dumbest of the ocean creatures, when we're in the ocean, that we're among really, really smart, deeply communicating, not even animals. I think of them as our companions, our fellow companions. Yeah, and especially if you're in distress, they can feel it, sense it, hear it, but it's about resonance. What I'm hearing here is, how open are we to receiving and then resonating and responding? And I was hearing also from our very beginning that we're getting our resonator boxes, our throats open, but the resonating, I think, happens throughout our bodies and then radiates around us, so that particularly animals can feel and sense that.
Wow, it's funny when you said we're the dumbest on the ocean. I went straight to maybe on Earth as well. I just started this bizarre experiment with an ant farm because we don't have ant farms in France, and so I've never seen they basically it's a you I don't know if you've seen them, but it's like this
Yes.
little
Oh, yes.
transparent
Because
box.
I did part of my growing up in the Midwest, and you bet we had ant farms.
Wow. And so we have at the moment, as I'm speaking to you, and I'm watching them build a city. These little guys that are carrying twice to three times the size of their bodies, they're passing each other very delicately between those really thin little tunnels. And I am so fascinated. And again, think that we are the dumbest. Like we can't freaking work with a red light, or a green light. And they are working out without talking or certainly using internet. They just communicate.
We could say that about bees and about like out in our backyard. There's an ant. The ants have been going on the same trail for the whole 22 years that we've lived here.
Yeah.
And so now I just make sure that their trail is open. So that there's nothing in the way of their trail. Move the rocks for it.
Oh, how beautiful. Well, we're coming to the end of this, but I'd like to, other than running the story with her after the fact, what could I have done? Like, what is another? Because when you say we tell a story, I'm noticing that the story is never that kind. Like the stories that we fill in the blank with.
Yeah, it probably isn't. Yeah.
It's not the one that's like the better option. Like, oh, she probably didn't hear me. We don't really go there. We go to like, she abandoned me, excluded me, blah, blah. Like I went there, right? So maybe telling stories is not such a bad thing. Like maybe it's like, what story are you telling? Like which line of that narrative are you playing?
Yes. And I think we're always making up stories. I mean, that's one of the things that people say is what really designates humans from other species is that we make up stories. And you can see that when you look even at paintings on the walls, in the caves in France, that people have been making up stories for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And I think we make up stories to try to understand the world.
Yeah.
Try to understand our place in it. But the story that most people make up is that I'm unlovable.
Yeah.
It's I'm wrong. There's something wrong with me. And if there's not something wrong with me, there's something wrong with you.
Yes.
And then the dueling stories of there's got to be something wrong. And that's one of the main mythologies that I've been, sort of hurling myself against for years and years, is that what if we made up a story that we're completely lovable? And that every aspect of you is lovable. And I can even hear myself saying, oh, come on, that's corny. But truly the what I experience when I'm with you is that I'm completely lovable. Mm-hmm. And I want everybody to choose friends around whom when you're just being together, you feel at home, that you can be yourself. Mm-hmm. And as we each be ourselves, I think we get more and more of our essence gets to shine forth, and then it trips. I think it sparks and resonates and radiates, that the other person or people can go, oh, I like that. That's so much better than, oh, I'm bad and wrong, and I have to, prove over and over again that I'm worthwhile. Mm-hmm. A whole new baseline.
Talk about a recipe to be and play and love.
One of the recipes that I like.
You see, Greta, I think, just passed by.
Did you see my? Yes. Where for those of you who are not watching, my feline Allie, who loves to be in here when we're talking to each other, because she can feel the love. And so she's now, I think she's saying, okay, they're almost over now, so I'm going to get ready.
Yes, I can come prance around and be beautiful. Thank you so much for this. And thank you for really giving me a lot of wisdom around what happened, and really helping me to, with a very specific how-to and deal with what happened and be able to connect with my little one. That was really special.
Yeah, I so appreciate your being willing to share that vulnerability. And because that's really the opening to loving yourself even more, is sharing that vulnerability. So yes, I love that about you. Thank you.
Thank you.